Welcome everybody. Are you looking to take your Unreal Engine skills to the next level? In this beginner tutorial, I will show you guys all the variable types, what they do, and how you can use them in Unreal Engine 5. My name is Taken Grace. I make Unreal Engine tutorial videos just like this, and there is so much to learn on this channel, so consider subscribing and join me on this journey to become a better game dev. All right, let's get right into Unreal Engine 5 and learn about variables. All right, so we are here inside Unreal Engine 5, okay? This might be your first video regarding Unreal Engine 5, so I'm gonna go as slow as I can here. I do have this cube, and I've made a blueprint called a cube, okay, which is an actor class, and we're just gonna be working in there today, okay? Okay, so I've made all the variables over here, and I will briefly explain what they all do, okay? So the first one is a Boolean. So a Boolean is a true or false, basically yes or no variable that the engine can use to reference specific states of certain things, okay? So you'll notice that we have two here. This one here is the get variable. So if I drag Boolean out, it'll ask me to get Boolean or set the Boolean. So this is getting the data that is inside this variable, okay? This one is setting the data as something else, okay? So if you want to change it from true to false, you would use a set variable. So an example from my recent video for making a stamina sprint system, I created a Boolean called isExhausted, so once my stamina runs out, I set isExhausted to true, and then I'm not able to sprint again until I've fully regained my stamina. Once I do have full stamina, then I would set it back to false. You will see these all over the engine. For example, like an equals equals node has a Boolean in it to let us know if this variable equals this variable, and it's going to be true or false, okay? So the node you will most commonly use with this is called a branch. So if you drag out of here and push B, you will get a branch, and then we can now execute true or false out of our blueprints here. So this is the one you're going to be using the most, okay? All right, so now we're gonna get into the numbers here, okay? There's 4 different number variables, okay? First one, it will be a byte, and that holds numbers between 0 and 255, okay? Bytes are most commonly used for stats. I've actually personally never used bytes myself, but for series like Pokemon, for example, use bytes a lot in their stats and their data and all that kind of stuff. So like example is the catch rate of all the Pokemon is between 3 and 255. The base stats of all the Pokemon are between 0 and 255. So those are some examples of where bytes are used, but I personally in Unreal Engine have never used bytes. I actually use integers instead. Integers and integer 64 and bytes actually are whole numbers, okay? They cannot have decimal points in them. The integer works between negative 2.1 million and 2.1 million. So there's a 4.2 million spread between the numbers that an integer can hold. Okay, if you need something a bit bigger, which I've never needed ever in Unreal Engine, is you would use an integer 64, which is negative 9.2 million to positive. Pardon me, I made that mistake there. To positive. Oh, that's what I was trying to do. 9.2 million. Okay. Again, I've never used integer 64. I've never had a situation where I would need the spread of 18.4 million. The 4.2 million is sufficient for me. So anyway, so integers I use for my ammo system in my FPS tutorial. You can use them for indexes. So over here, for example, this is called an array. We'll get into that in a second. But an array is a list of objects. So here's my list, and I can come over here and tell it what item on the list I want to get. Okay, that's what an index is. I do have a full-length tutorial on specifically arrays. If you guys are interested in checking that out after this video, then by all means. Okay, you'll notice also that if you roll over this, it'll tell you exactly what variable it is. So this is an integer. Okay, down here, this is a float. Over here, this is a string. So if you roll over them, it'll tell you exactly what it is. Okay, so keep that in mind if you're not sure what the color is or anything like that, right? So this is an integer 64, etc., etc. Okay, all right, so that's it for whole numbers. Next, we have a float variable, which is a floating number, and it can have decimals. Okay, this one you're probably going to use the most out of the 4 of these. Okay, so like time, for example, you can use floats for. Percents, a lot of percents in Unreal Engine work between 0 and 1. Okay, so you'll need to be able to convert a float between 0 and 1, which is essentially entirely a decimal number. Okay, health systems are good. Scale, again, is usually between 0 and 1. X, Y, and Z coordinates are usually floats as well, because you need that fine detail compared to having whole numbers. Damage is another really good example. If you want to have, you know, your headshots in your first-person shooter game do 25 damage, but the arm to do less damage, you're going to need to be able to times these by obviously, a decimal point. So, okay. Here's a node that has a float in it. We'll encounter a couple more in this tutorial here. This is the event tick. This runs every single frame, okay? So every single frame is going to be pumping out, or how many seconds have elapsed since that last frame. So if you actually drag this out, this is a print string node. This can be used to help debug or give you, the developer, some information, but this will never appear to actual players. Okay, so if you drag this float into here, you'll see it says convert float to string. We'll explore what strings are in the next bit here, but if we hit compile, always hit compile because that's going to check for errors, and this will come out with a green check mark if you don't have any errors. And then we're going to come on over here and hit play or simulate the level, and you'll see that now Unreal Engine is printing this data on the screen so that I can see it. Okay, so that's how many seconds are happening between each frame. Okay. Another thing you can do with this particular thing is you can create time. If I want to do that, I'm just going to drag this print string over. I'm going to drag my float over here, and I'm going to get it. Okay. I'm going to drag it of delta seconds, and I'm going to add our float number. Okay. So once these two are added together, it's going to output a new amount, and then I want to set my float as that new amount. Okay. That's how that's going to work. And then I'm going to drag out of this output node and then plug it into the string. So now it will output the result of this. Okay. But this data by default in a float is 0. Okay. You need to click on it, make sure you've compiled, and then it'll give you the float value over here. And it should be 0 by default. I was just testing some stuff out before the video. So we're going to have to put a value in here, or else this is going to basically add nothing together, and this won't do anything. So we're going to add 1. Okay. Okay, this float will be 1, and the delta seconds will be adding every single time we have a frame. Okay, let's hit compile, and we'll just test that out, and we'll have a look. So now we've converted this into actual seconds. Okay, so this is kind of the starting point of a day-night cycle or a time system in your game. Okay, so this will keep counting up per second. If you guys do want to learn how to make a day-night cycle, I do have a tutorial on that as well, so you guys can check that out. Okay. All right, back in here. That was just an example of how to use floats. Let's go down here. So now we are in the text-based variables. Okay, so the first one here is a name. So the name, obviously we can name objects in the game, and it's the fastest to compare between the two here. So if we have our name plugged in here, does this name equal this name? And then there you go. You see that Boolean again, right? So this is the fastest way to compare stuff in Unreal Engine. Okay, you can't compare strings. Which is just a piece of text. Okay, literally that's all it is just a piece of text. So if I drag my string out and I try to do an equals node, it won't let me. It'll disconnect it right away, and then I'll try to plug it in. It says no matching function for string, so you can't compare two strings. Text is the same way. If I try to plug text in, it won't work. There's no equals nodes for text. Okay, so names are the best way to compare two things. Okay. Strings here. So strings, I haven't really used too many strings in my Unreal Engine journey here. All right, so the big difference between strings and text is text will be shown to the player, or can be shown to the player, whereas strings generally are not shown to the player, but they contain strings of data. Okay, so, or strings of text, pardon me. Okay, strings and text can both have alphanumerical characters. Okay, so you can see I can put anything I want to the string there. Same thing with the text, that'll work the same. Okay, so with text, you can pretty much convert almost anything to text. So if I drag out a text node and set it here up and drag in, this float, for example, you'll see that it has to convert the float to a text, but it can be done. Okay, same thing with this string. We can convert the string to text. The name, we can convert name to text. So a lot of this stuff we can convert to text, which is really handy when you want to start doing widgets later and making like your whole UI system, and you want to convert obviously like your damage or your health or anything like that to actual text so your players can see it. Okay, all right, so that is the text-based things. Next we're going to come down here. This is the transform variables. Okay, so the first one is a vector. Think of vectors as a direction. All right, so we're looking for something going in a specific direction. Okay, The two most common nodes for that is get forward vector and get right vector. Okay, there's no backwards or left vector in Unreal Engine or in gaming in general. You're always going to get the forward vector or the right vector, and then you would multiply it by -1 to get the reverse. Okay, so in this case, if I wanted to get the reverse vector, I would drag out of here and get a multiply node. Okay, and you'll notice that this wants a transform by default, or pardon me, a vector by default. So you want to multiply a vector by a vector, but you can right click and come all the way down here where it says pin conversions, and you can convert these to an integer, for example. Okay, so we can convert this to an integer and then times all three of these vectors by -1. Okay, now we have the reverse vector, and that's outputting what that would be. Okay, so you can do the same thing for right vector to get the left vector. You can also get the up vector. Okay, so there it is. You can get the up vector. So if you, for example, ladders, we want to get the up vector of the actor and then start adding to that so that we can climb the ladder, right? So that's a good example of that. The next one is a rotator, which obviously covers rotation. Obviously these three variables are 360 degrees only, and then it loops back to 0. Okay, so both with vector and with rotator, you'll see that there's the X, Y, and Z coordinates here. You can right click this and go split struct pin, and now these have become floats. Okay, so if you wanted to add if you wanted to put different data in all three of these as 3 individual floats, then you can just either type those right into here, or if you had a float up here that maybe you did a bunch of math and set this float as a value, you can now plug that into the X, the Y, or the Z, or all 3 if you wanted. Okay, so again, vector, same thing. You can split the struct pin, and now they've become floats. Okay, so these ones are famous for being able to split. Stuff like a name is a variable that doesn't change. Okay, there's nothing in here that's creating this variable, so we can't split these ones. Same with integer and floats and all those kind of stuff. You can't split these, but you can split these ones down here. Okay, so just like with these 3 here, you can also split this transform. So this is a complete transform, and if I split this, you'll see it's a vector, a rotator, and a scale. Okay, that makes a complete transform, and that is an orange one here. You'll see these all the time if you spawn actor from class. It wants a transform. Where are we spawning this actor? So that's where you would get all of this information. Okay, another way to think of a vector is kind of a location as well. So this vector, so with the 3 of these put together, it's basically pointing exactly where this actor should be, or whatever this transform is. Okay, so 0, 0, 0 by default is the world origin of your project. Okay, if you actually go into this project right here, and if I click on here, you can see we have a location here. This is the vector or the location, right? So this has variables or values in here. If I clear this, it's going to say 0, 0, 0, and you'll notice that the cube here has snapped to my world origin. Okay, that's what that means. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that for now and put my cube back where I had it. Scale, basically leave this at 1, 1, and 1. That'll make it the proper scale. And if you start messing with this, then it's going to change the X, the Y, or the Z values. Okay. All right. So that is how all of that works. Next, I'm going to explain the two differences between these. So these are both text variables, but one of them looks a bit different. This is a single variable, meaning only one value can be in here. Okay. Text variable. That's the text I put in there. That's the only data that this variable can hold. Okay. This is called an array. An array, like I mentioned earlier, can have multiple things, multiple values in them. Okay. So if you click on this array and make sure you hit compile, this should appear over here. And you can see that I've added a bunch of array elements. So there's 7 in here now, and I can type in a bunch of different text to all of these. Okay. So now this is holding all 7 of those. I need to be able to access that and tell it which one I want. So if I get a copy, this index now, if I say 1 through 7, I'm telling it which one on the list to get. Okay. And this is usually accompanied by what's called a for each loop. Okay. So if I drag this over here, plug in the index here. Once again, I cover arrays inside another video. So if you guys want to watch that, that'll cover this. But okay. So the next thing I want to show you guys is these are the basic variables that are included when you basically get this drop-down menu when you make a new variable, which you can do right here by hitting the plus. Okay, so here's all the basic variables that we just talked about, but you can access any variable in Unreal Engine 5. So for example, if I come out here, you know, let's pretend that we're going to add a light in here. So let's add one here. So we'll come up here, we'll go to lights, and we'll add a point light. There's our point light. Okay. That exists in the world now. So for example, if I want to reference that light inside our cube blueprint, I will need to create a variable for that. So down here, we'll call this light, and I will hit this drop down menu and I will search for it, because you'll notice that if I go to object types, this is every object in the game that you can reference, which is an astronomical amount. So we're going to come up here and we're going to search for point light. Okay. You'll notice this popped up here. Okay. We have point light and point light component. Which one should you choose? Okay. Up here, these are components. So if it's a part of a blueprint, that's when you would get the point light component. That's what that means. This point light means it's its own standalone thing inside our world. Okay, so this is the one we're going to select, and you'll notice that there's 4 different options here. There's an object reference and a class reference. An object reference means that it is one individual instance of this point light. Okay, a class reference means there would be multiple lights that are falling under a class. So the best example I can give for this, in my first person shooter course, I have a weapon class. Okay, all of my coding, all of my variables, all that stuff is going to be inside that weapon class. Okay, and then we're going to make children of that weapon class, which will be all of the individual weapons that I want to be a part of my weapon class. That's called inheritance. Okay, and that is used a lot in Unreal Engine, and it's a really good practice to start. I do plan to make a video about inheritance in the future, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel here. Okay, the class reference will enable you to pick a child out of that class that you specifically want to reference. Okay, so that's what a class reference does. These two are called hard references, so it's going to have to load this particular object into memory in order to reference it. Okay, soft object classes allow you to not load something into memory, which reduces the load obviously on Unreal Engine, and you can reference some variables from that object from soft object references. Okay, so those are pretty handy. I will do another video on that as well. For this instance, we want an object reference because we want to reference only one light. Okay, so let's hit compile. You can see here that light is grayed out. We cannot set this variable here, and that's because light is not instance editable. Okay, so for example, I have one cube in this world right now. Okay, so there's only one instance of this cube, but if I were to duplicate this cube by holding Alt and dragging, now I have 2 cubes. There's 2 separate instances of this cube now in our level. Okay, so if I make this instance editable, now both cubes can reference a different light. Okay, so I'm gonna hit compile. I'm gonna go back over here. So if we come over to our details panel for our cube, you'll notice that we have, under default, we have a light thing here now that we can select. Okay, so this wasn't here before unless we actually made it instance editable. Okay, so now you can drag this down. Since we only have one light in our level, it shows up right here. But if we had a bunch of different lights in our level, right, now we have 3 lights, and we select this. Now we, on this drop down menu, we have 3 different lights. Okay, so you will choose which one you want to reference, and now back in our event graph here, now we can do stuff with this light in here. Okay, and it's going to reference whatever one you chose in your world. So for example, we'll go on, we'll get our event to begin play, and you know, on this light here, we're going to get the light and we're going to set color. Set, oh yeah, it's spelled the American way. We're going to get the set light component. Okay, so we're going to set this light, and the new light color will be, I don't know, red. Okay, we'll hit compile, and we'll test this out. We'll hit play. There we go. That light's red now. Okay, so the other lights didn't turn because we didn't reference them in any other way. Okay, so you'll see right here we got an access none error saying, hey, we tried to read that property light in this other instance here, and it didn't have any data in it. Okay, so that's what that means. So why don't we put data in there? So here we are clicking on this one. This light we're going to reference is going to be point light number 3. Okay, and now we'll hit play. and you'll see that 2 lights have turned green now, and we can just get out of this. Okay, hopefully that gives you guys a bit more information on what variables are and what they can do. This was a super basic tutorial, but I do want you guys to keep learning. So if you guys are interested in learning about arrays, like I mentioned, you guys can click on this video up here. I'll break down the arrays, what they do, and all of the types of nodes you would use when you're dealing with an array. Okay, hope you guys are subscribed. We're gonna learn so much stuff on this channel, and I'm excited to have you here. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.